The OSR scene is busy these days. New games arrive one after another, each trying to capture a different shade of early edition play. With so many options, choosing the right one can feel overwhelming. However, on the back of this particular TTRPG, Dragonslayer by Greg Gillespie, there is a statement that feels worth following up on. It states, "This game mixes two old D&D styles, simple rules, and more options, and puts all the essentials you need to play in one book." Taken at face value, this suggests a complete experience in just under 300 pages, all in one book. Now, that's a bold promise, and it's what we'll be exploring in this video. Let's delve deeper. Before we move into the book proper, it's worth grounding ourselves in what most players consider the essential components of an all-in-one OSR game. While opinions vary, the general consensus includes these items. We'll keep this list in mind as we explore Dragonslayer chapter by chapter, and at the end we'll return to it to see how many boxes this book truly checks. Let's dive in. With TTRPGs, we often skip the opening pages and jump straight to character creation or mechanics. In Dragonslayer's case, that would be unwise. Gillespie uses his first page to lay out the premise of what he's trying to achieve, not only in the structure of the game, but in the tenets he believes should guide play. OSR is more than a label people paste onto a cover to signal nostalgia. It's a philosophy, a way of approaching play. These 6 tenets outline what that philosophy expects from both maze controller, MC, DM, and players. All of this is a lot to take in, but that's also the point. Dragonslayer puts its philosophy up front because everything else in the book grows from it. These 6 tenets define how the game expects you to think, act, and survive at the table. With those roots now in place, we can finally turn to the real question of the video. Does Dragonslayer bring all of this together into a true all-in-one OSR experience? As you can see, this is a very functional character sheet. In old school D&D, this kind of layout was typical, but much more dense. Players coming from modern TTRPGs will immediately notice the absence of a skill list. This is the second page of the character sheet. Again, it's straightforward and utilitarian. Character sheets often reveal the designer's intent, and in this case, the focus isn't on a character as a bundle of mechanics. It's on the adventure that lies ahead. Here we have the opening page and the tenets I mentioned at the start of the video. Once again, it's not something you'll want to skip. The terminology page also serves an important function. It explains, among other things, how the dice are used. And for players of modern TTRPGs, one standout is the ability check. You roll a d20 and try to roll under or meet one of your 6 ability scores. This is, in essence, the skill system. That wasn't present on the character sheet. It's worth remembering that in OSR style play, skills aren't used as often as you might expect. The terminology page is clear, upfront, and genuinely useful. One of those sections you really don't want to skip. This page lays out the 10 steps of character creation. Dragonslayer uses a classic table-tested method. Roll 3d6 7 times. Drop the lowest result. And arrange the remaining 6 scores however you like. It isn't taken directly from AD&D or Basic or Expert, but it reflects a popular house rule that even I used from early play. I won't go through every step here, but what matters is that the game puts its procedures up front. It tells you exactly how to build a character before diving into details, which fits that early edition no-nonsense approach. This page continues the 6 core ability scores associated with early Dungeons & Dragons. It's worth reading these carefully, because some of them differ from the original rule sets, and subtly change how Dragonslayer plays. Dexterity, for example, now affects damage. Charisma directly influences the number and morale of henchmen and hirelings, and you'll find that retainers are woven throughout Dragonslayer in a way that gives the game a distinct flavor. These small shifts matter, and they shape the tone of play. A classic, old-school visual introduces the races of the game, with humans presented first as the baseline. No class level limits. Dragonslayer divides races into humans and demi-humans. Demi-humans include Cyclops men, dwarves, elves, gnomes, half-elves, and half-orcs, and halflings. This page sets the stage for how ancestry works in Dragonslayer, rooted in early D&D traditions, but with its own quirks. Looking at just one race, the Cyclops men, gives a clear sense of how Dragonslayer handles race design. Each ancestry has minimum ability requirements and a small package of traits that nudge characters towards certain roles, and the Cyclopsman makes the pattern easy to see. They need high strength and constitution, their single eye hurts ranged accuracy, and their physiology grants resistances and even immunities. They're stoic, superstitious, and built for the front line. The 1980s movie Crawl comes to mind, that same mix of mythic melancholy and brute resilience. As you can see, Dragonslayer keeps its ancestry options open and readable, very much in line with its old school roots. The Cleric is Dragonslayer's clearest example of how the game handles a classic fantasy role without modern embellishment. It's the familiar old school chassis, D8 hit dice, armor, blunt weapons, turning undead, and prayer-based magic. Kept intentionally straightforward. One detail I've always found amusing is the traditional no blades restriction. Back in the AD&D days, cultists and evil priests ran around with daggers, but my cleric couldn't touch a sword? I understand the symbolism, but it never felt consistent. Modern Brett, who is me, would hack that instantly, and Dragonslayer's own tenets, especially rulings over rules, make it clear that the game expects you to. Your table wants clerics with blades? Go ahead, nothing breaks. Divine Magic follows the classic prepare through prayer structure, with bonus spells for high wisdom and the ability to convert any first level spell into Cure Light Wounds. The class doesn't try to modernize or expand the role. Instead, it reinforces Dragonslayer's focus on clarity, durability, and long-term play. It's a clean, functional baseline for how the game handles combat and magic. Like all classes in Dragonslayer, the cleric's progression continues beyond level 10. The game uses a flat XP cost for post-10 advancement, reinforcing its assumption that campaigns can grow over long periods of play. The Thief is Dragonslayer's clearest expression of non-combat tension. Their skills are narrow, situational tools, and the MC rolls them secretly, keeping players unsure of success until the fiction reveals it. Ability checks handle the everyday attempts anyone can try. Thief skills represent the exceptional moments, slipping into darkness, bypassing traps, creating openings for the party. The class highlights Dragonslayer's approach to exploration, cautious movement, imperfect information, and decisions shaped by risk rather than mechanical certainty. There are 12 classes to choose from in Dragonslayer. What stands out is the breadth of choice. Dragonslayer pulls from the full AD&D lineage rather than the minimal class lists of the original 1974 rules, or the 7 classes of Basic and Expert. Systems like OSE and Shadow Dark keep their core classes intentionally small, unless you buy expansions. But Dragonslayer keeps or includes the entire suite right in the core book. Dragonslayer also supports multi-classing, which gives players more freedom and lets characters grow in hybrid directions over time. This is very much an AD&D feature, rather than something from the original 1974 rules. It adds flexibility without complicating the system. And as we reach page 40, Dragonslayer wraps up character creation with 2 final pieces, alignment and starting gold. Alignment follows the classic 9-point AD&D grid, lawful good through chaotic evil, presented as a worldview rather than a strict behavioral code. Starting gold is also listed here, broken down by class. Dragonslayer opens its equipment chapter with the classic AD&D spread of coins. It's familiar, functional, and immediately tied to the game's encumbrance system. More coins means more weight. And more weight means slower movement. And as we scroll through the next pages, you'll see the usual lineup of weapons, armor, and gear, each presented with simple, practical stats that imply how Dragonslayer expects adventuring to feel. We do need to focus on armor a bit more. Not only does it use descending AC, but it also highlights Dragonslayer's encumbrance mechanism. Movement. Ability scores don't affect how much you carry, but treasure does. Your armor sets your base movement. Your race adjusts it slightly, and coins are the only thing that slow you further. The thresholds are clear. You can haul as much as you want, but the more you take, the slower you go. It's Dragonslayer's way of saying, you can carry the dragon's hoard, assuming the dragon doesn't prefer the color of copper. Transportation follows with straightforward entries for land and water travel. And the fast packs offer quick start bundles that highlight what the game considers essential for exploration. Everything here supports an OSR style built around gear, movement, and the small decisions that shape an adventure. Of special note, I did not see lodgings or meal costs. The spell chapter in Dragonslayer is substantial. 71 pages of magic covering everything from simple utility to world-shaping effects. The lists will look familiar to anyone who's played early D&D, but what matters here is the tone. Dragonslayer's magic is physical, grounded, and sometimes reversible, encouraging rulings and creativity over mechanical certainty. A good example is growth, which includes its reverse, shrink. Enlarging a creature isn't just a numerical buff. It changes mass, reach, and physical presence. Shrink works the same way in reverse, turning obstacles into tools or threats into manageable problems. It's magic that interacts with the world materially, not abstractly. That pattern runs through the whole chapter. Dragonslayer spells are flexible, practical, and occasionally dangerous. They expect players to experiment and the MC to rule on the spot. It's old school magic in the best sense. Evocative, open-ended, and designed to create as many complications as there are solutions. The monsters chapter is big. 92 pages, and it covers everything from hydras and goblins to draft horses and war mounts. That range tells you how Dragonslayer treats its bestiary. Monsters aren't just combat encounters. They're part of the world's physical texture. If it's in the book, it's something the party might meaningfully interact with. One detail that stands out is what isn't here. There's no stat block for commoners or town guards. Dragonslayer follows the older logic. If a human appears in the bestiary, it's because they're dangerous. Brigands, cultists, acolytes, berserkers, these are the people you might actually fight. Everyone else is assumed to be a simple 1 HD creature, unless the MC decides otherwise. The brigand entry shows how flexible that can be. Their hit dice varies, implying rank and file brigands behave like 1 HD fighters. While leaders start around 4th level and go up from there, the Gnoll, my favorite monster, entry adds another nice touch. A random weapon and armor table. One group might be lightly armored with polearms, another might show up in half-plate with scimitars and javelins. That variability adds tension. You don't know what you're facing until you see it. The stat conventions: hit dice, descending AC, morale, treasure types, line up cleanly with TSR era modules and most modern OSR adventures, making the bestiary easy to mix with older material. And yes, Gillespie's dry humor shows up here too. If you spot it, you'll know. I'm looking at you, invisible stalker. Taken together, the Monsters chapter reinforces Dragonslayer's identity. A world where danger is physical, encounters are unpredictable, and the MC is trusted to shape the moment. Dragonslayer splits treasure into mundane loot and magic items, but together they form a substantial section of the book. About 50 pages, covering everything from coin hoards and gem tables to potions, rings, rune stones, and intelligent swords. The volume is impressive, but what matters is how Dragonslayer uses treasure to shape play. The random tables, treasure types A through Z, individual and layer treasure, gem values by level, are built to be rolled at the table, reinforcing the game's world's first approach. Treasure is something you discover, not something placed for you. The XP system drives this home. You gain 1 experience point per gold piece recovered, and only 1/10 that amount for defeating monsters. Combat still matters, but treasure is the real engine of advancement. And that pushes the play towards exploration, problem solving, and clever ways of getting the loot without fighting everything that moves. So, no hoboing, murder hoboing. The magic items chapter continues the classic feel. Potions, scrolls, rings, rods, staves, wands, miscellaneous magic, intelligent swords again. The variety is wide, the tables are dense. Items glow faintly under detect magic. Curse ones glow red, and some have charges or recharge rules. There are no crafting rules here. Magic items are found, not made. Dragonslayer stays firmly in the old school tradition. The combat rules are surprisingly compact. The chapter spans 5 pages, but one of those is a full worked example of combat, and another is a dedicated saving throw table. In practice, the actual rules of combat fit into just 3 pages. That ease tells you a lot about the game's priorities. Dragonslayer is meant to be fast-paced. You'll see on screen that initiative has a few small tweaks. The game supports both group and individual initiative, and the group option speeds things up considerably. Spellcasters also declare their targets before initiative is rolled, which adds a small element of risk and luck to the flow of battle. These aren't dramatic changes by any means, but they subtly reinforce the game's emphasis on tempo and uncertainty. Dragonslayer describes itself as a miniatures light, and that's accurate. Most fights can be run entirely in the theater of the mind, unless you're dealing with a large number of adversaries. The rules don't push you towards grids or precise positioning. Instead, they assume the MC will adjudicate distance, movement, and line of sight with common sense. It's a style that keeps the focus on decisions rather than measurements. The chapter also covers morale and critical hits, both handled in a straightforward, old-school manner you'd expect. A few additional examples help clarify edge cases, but nothing here is dense or procedural. The overall effect is a combat system that stays out of the way. It's fast, functional, and designed to reduce the burden on both players and the MC. Taken together, Dragonslayer's combat rules reinforce the game's broader identity: quick to run, easy to reference, and built to support the flow of exploration rather than dominate it. Dungeon exploration is one of the most deliberate parts of Dragonslayer. The chapter is only 3 pages, followed by 2 pages of examples, but together they form the heart of the game. Exploration is the default mode of play, and Dragonslayer treats it with the same care Gillespie brings to his Megadungeons. The system covers the essentials: time, rest, light, traps, doors, wandering monsters, and the cadence of movement through a dangerous environment. These aren't optional flourishes, they're the procedures that give the dungeon its rhythm. Time advances in 10-minute turns, torches burn down, spells expire, and choices accumulate weight. It keeps tension alive, even when nothing is attacking you. What stands out is how complete the system feels despite the low page count. Light sources have clear durations. Listening at doors, forcing them, and checking for traps all have defined procedures. Random encounters are built directly into the turn structure. Even rest is handled cleanly, preventing drift at the table. It's a compact chapter, but it covers everything you need to run a dungeon crawl without flipping through sections. The examples that follow show the procedures in motion, how time advances, how noise attracts attention, how decisions shape danger. You can feel the lineage from Barrow Maze, Highfell, and the Forbidden Caverns. Dragonslayer distills that exploration logic into a tight, usable form. Taken together, the Dungeon Exploration chapter reinforces Dragonslayer's core identity, a game built around movement, tension, and a slow uncovering of space. It's hard to imagine running this system without it. Alrighty, let's group these chapters together. They all serve the same kind of purpose, giving the maze controller the tools to build and run adventures. If the earlier chapters showed us who the characters are and what they carry, these chapters show us the world they move through, and how Dragonslayer expects that world to behave. Dragonslayer doesn't treat retainers as flavor text. From the moment you read the charisma stat, it's clear they matter. Charisma directly affects how many retainers you can hire and how loyal they'll be. And in a game where treasure is the primary source of XP, someone has to carry the loot. Think Raiders of the Lost Ark, porters waiting in the jungle while the adventurers go forward. That's the general feeling. Retainers are needed. The rules are clean. This ties into Dragonslayer's tenet of the League of Ordinary Gentlemen. The party is the protagonist, not the individual. Retainers reinforce that. They're part of the team, part of the risk, and part of the reward. Dragonslayer doesn't pretend to be a setting book. Gillespie's theory is simple. The dungeon is the setting. Everything else, the town, the wilderness, the journey, exists to support the core experience of the dungeon. The adventure design chapter starts with the basics. What's in a hamlet? What players can expect to find? And how to sketch out the area around the dungeon. It's minimal, but it's enough. The emphasis is always on the dungeon. From there, Dragonslayer hands you the tools to build. Monster tables by level, trap tables, a random dungeon generator with a worksheet and example, even a partial dungeon. The Black Maze. That functions like a half-written scenario. It's not a full module, but it's enough to get you started. The wilderness section follows the same logic. It's not about building a continent. It's about sketching the area around the dungeon. You get a blank hex map, encounter tables, and rules for getting lost, which I do a lot. It's keep on the Borderlands logic. The dungeon is the center, and the world radiates outward from it. The last chapters of Dragonslayer look like, well, miscellaneous errata, but they're actually the connective tissue of the game. They're where the book steps out of the strict rules and speaks directly to the reader about how Dragonslayer expects to be played. These three sections work together as the book's informal voice. The FAQ, for example, answers the questions players will inevitably ask, mixing clarity with Gillespie's dry humor. Magic User 101 gives new spellcasters a short, practical guide to survive early levels because they're mushy. Sage Advice offers small insights and nudges about how to think and run the game. None of these are rules, they're tone. They show the spirit behind Dragonslayer's ruling's first philosophy and give you a sense of how the designer expects the game to feel at the table. Carousing is one of the most important procedures, and I'm genuinely surprised it isn't its own permanent section. But perhaps that's the joke. If it were section 14, the book wouldn't end on lucky 13. Mechanically, carousing is simple. You spend gold, you earn XP. And then roll for consequences. Now, philosophically, it's essential. Carousing encourages players to engage with the world between adventures, to blow off steam, to create stories that aren't tied to combat or treasures. It's a pressure valve and a narrative engine rolled into one. Dragonslayer encourages you not to avoid it. The game assumes adventurers live hard and celebrate harder, and occasionally wake up with a tattoo that they don't remember getting. It's part of the rhythm of play. These tables provide the small details that make a dungeon feel alive. Sarcophagus contents, odd inscriptions, strange objects, forgotten debris. They're meant to be rolled on, not read straight through, and they give the MC the texture needed to turn a map into a place. The death certificate, a tongue-in-cheek form of fallen characters. It's small, but it reinforces the game's tone. Death is part of the adventure, and you might as well have fun marking the moment. This is a time chart if you feel you want to use it. It's very cute. The final pages outline the Dragonslayer third-party license, signaling that the game is meant to be expanded. Adventures, supplements, hacks. Go for it. The door is open. And that rounds up what's in Dragonslayer. Now that we've walked through the entire book, we can return to the question that started this review. Does Dragonslayer provide an all-in-one OSR experience? Looking back at the original checklist, Dragonslayer covers almost everything with confidence. The rules are complete, the procedures are tight, the toolkit is robust. You can create characters, explore dungeons, travel the wilderness, generate adventures, and adjudicate the world without needing another book. The one area where Dragonslayer steps sideways rather than forward is the setting. It does not include a fully realized world in the traditional sense. There's no grand map, no pantheon, no geopolitical scaffolding. Gillespie has said he's working on a full world setting, slated for the coming years, and you can see hints of that world scattered throughout the book. In the hamlet, in the black maze, and in the tone of the monsters and magic items. But it's also important to remember that Gillespie has already created 4 Megadungeons. The Barrow Maze, Highfell, Forbidden Caverns of Archaea, and Dwero Deep. Each one is a setting of its own, with its own implied culture, history, and cosmology. Dragonslayer follows that lineage deliberately. The Megadungeon is the gravitational center of play. The world grows outward from it. Exploration reveals the setting, not exposition. So does Dragonslayer deliver an all-in-one OSR experience? Mechanically, procedurally, and philosophically, yes. The only open space is the world itself, and Dragonslayer seems content to let that world emerge at your table, just as Gillespie's Megadungeons have done for years. And as always, it isn't about what I think. Do you feel Dragonslayer answers the question?